Hello and welcome back to Rev Endurance Sports and another edition of what is in our stand today. Today, we're going to talk about this Cervelo P2 and some crankset bottom bracket issues and what we're going to do to fix it and what we're going to replace on it. But before we go too much further, if you would please subscribe to the channel. I had a goal of 200 subscribers. We're at 201 as of March 29th. 2021, and I'm very happy. So those of you who have subscribed, thank you. And those of you who haven't, please show some love, subscribe, like, and share. Also, if you would, hit that notification bell. That way you can get a notification when I post the next video. All right, so let's talk about this bike. But first, a little bit of history. This customer came to me a few years back when we purchased the Garmin Vector pedals, and kind of fell off the radar for a couple of years, 2, 3, maybe even longer than 3 years. And then he contacted me and said, hey, you know, I've been doing this same loop for years, and I feel like I'm losing a mile or mile and a half per hour average speed on this loop, and I've been doing the same loop year after year, training day after training day. So I pretty much know what's expected there. But so I said, well, I don't know, let's bring the bike in, let's take a look. So we kind of went through all the bearings on this bike. We serviced the bearings in both hubs, front and rear. We also took a look at his bottom bracket to see if there was any drag. And that is going to be the issue for this video anyway. And also checked his pulleys, his chain was worn. So we went through quite a few things, and he has been happy with the results. Everything is back to normal now. And each one of the wheels, the bearings, they just never been serviced. And the beautiful thing about Shimano hubs is that they are loose ball bearings. Now this is a R5 wheel set, RS wheel set, and even though that is an OE, original equipment wheel set that they put on bikes at certain price points, even their highest end wheels, their Dura Ace wheels, also have loose ball bearings. And so it's easy in the shop environment. Take the bearings out, clean them, use new grease, and put everything back together. And it can be done right there. If you're a home mechanic, you can do this yourself. And that avoids having to order cartridge bearings and these kinds of things. But Shimano also likes loose ball bearings because of the way bearings react in a corner, and the forces on them when it's a cartridge bearing are not ideal. However, 98% of the wheel companies out there will use cartridge bearings as opposed to a loose ball bearing. We'll have a video at another time about how to service this loose ball bearing system and the difference between that and a cartridge bearing system. But let's talk about the issue that we have today. So this is an FSA Gossamer crankset, and it has, well, the bike itself is a BB Right bottom bracket. And of course, Cervelo, they do these kinds of things where they invent a better mousetrap. They have a better way of transferring the loads to one part of the bike or another, and then they create a proprietary type system. In this case, it's called BB Right. So what you have is on the left side, which is the non-drive side, you have a flush mounted bottom bracket, and on the drive side, you have basically an external cup on the drive side. So it's a little bit different than other bike manufacturers do. So you need to have a specific BB Right bottom bracket. So when I removed this crankset to check his bottom bracket bearings, the non-drive side was a little bit notchy. And that's the most common, by the way. The non-drive side bottom bracket bearings usually show wear and a binding of sorts before the drive side does. And for those that are newer to bike mechanics, this is always called the drive side, where all the drivetrain components are. So the non-drive side bearing typically seems to go bad more frequently than the drive side. So I noticed that, told the customer, and then when I went to put the bottom bracket back on, the crankset back on, with all of the spacers and fittings that were there, I couldn't torque down the FSA crankset to the specified torque. When I did that, the crankset would bind. It was too tight. So I said, well, you know, here's the thing. If you want better shifting, let's move over to a Shimano crankset. Additionally, I'll show you as when I bring the camera closer. Additionally, the chain ring, especially the big chain ring, looked worn to me. So we have a bottom bracket issue. We have a crankset that we can't torque down to the spec. Not even half of the torque required. And we have worn chain rings. So I said, listen, let's abandon this setup. Let's move towards a better bottom bracket system. And let's move towards a Shimano crankset. So let me grab the camera real quick and let me show you what I am looking at here. And so these, if you look at these teeth, they are quite a bit, they're quite pointy, which of course does not allow for a really good area for the chain to fall on top of. And then this is what I meant by there being a cup on the drive side, but not on the non-drive side. So you'll see here that the bottom bracket mounts flush, okay? So with this bolt here is how you torque the crankset back on, and there was just no way to get it up to the specified torque of over 34, 36 inch-pounds. All right, so let's go back to the bench and let's take a look at what we're going to replace this with. We're going to replace it with a Shimano 105 5034 crankset. It's the same he had on the FSA. Those were the same chain rings and the same crank length of 172.5. So there that is. And we're also going to replace the bottom bracket with a Wheels Manufacturing bottom bracket. I prefer the Enduro bearings torque tight bottom bracket. I like it better. I like the quality of the bearings better, but we still got angular contact bearings on this one. These are steel bearings. It's not a ceramic bearing upgrade or anything like that. And I like these because if you can see there's threads. So this bottom bracket threads into itself and creates a very, very good purchase onto the frame. And when you have that, you do eliminate a lot of the creaky bottom bracket issues that are prone on bikes that have press fit bottom brackets, BB30, PF30, BB86, BB386, and so on, and so on, and so on. All right, so that's what we're going to use there. One other thing is he has those Garmin pedals, and they're from a previous generation, so they need to be torqued on there with a crow's foot. And then, of course, we are going to torque the crankset on there with the smaller torque wrench, because we only need about 12 to 14 Newton meters, and we need about 34 to 40 Newton meters on the Garmin pedals to torque them on there. They're the Garmin power meter pedals. Okay, these are also the wrenches that we need to install, and of course they're already branded with the Enduro torque tight bearings that I talked about. So good tool, and a really, really good set of bottom bracket options when you have creaky bottom brackets and stuff like that. They also thread in to each other and create a very, very tight bottom bracket area, and that eliminates all of the known type of issues for creaky bottom brackets. This bottom bracket is actually in the wrong orientation, but that's not as important. But this is going to be the drive side, and this side here is going to be flush with the non-drive side bottom bracket portion of the bike. Okay, that's all for now. I appreciate everyone who has subscribed and has tuned into this channel. And please like, share, and hit that notification bell so that you can be notified the next time I post a new video. In the meantime, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you up the road.